connection can resolve conflict, and that I think is what designers need to do culturally and over the next 10 years. Great design enables human connection and facilitates human agency to shine through. It is the emergence of resonance between people that is the foundation of human connection. People resonate with each other, emerging human connection happens, and that's what design has to facilitate.
You cannot design a building without actually caring and being very curious and understanding what goes into it and how the inhabitants occupy the space. When the tenants go in or when the hotel goes in, how people flow through the space, how they plan the space. Is it functional? Is it functional from the moment you walk through the door or even up to the door, all the way to the rooftop or through the elevators? How is it almost this seamless process and just feel really clean and right? But what we found is that the factors that attract people to a city are not necessarily the factors that motivate them to stay. People really stay in a city because they have a vibrancy in the city that they're in. They have an emotional attachment to the city, and then also a sense of belonging.
Hello, everyone. I am Priya Shamankar, and I must say that I'm delighted to welcome all of you to episode 10 of VC Life Season 3. For those joining us for the first time, VC Life is brought to you by the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club, popularly known as GVCC, an initiative by Godrej Locks and Architectural Solutions. GVCC, a vibrant community of over 2,000 architects and interior designers, driven by collaboration, knowledge sharing, and of course, a shared commitment to design excellence. So if you haven't joined already, check out the link in the chat to become a part of this fast-growing network. Well, before we begin, let us have a quick look at what GVCC is all about.
Welcome to the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club, where innovation meets collaboration. GVCC is a unique platform for architects and interior designers to merge their creative visions with our innovative product offerings. We aim to cultivate a network of thought leaders, driving innovation and excellence in the industry. Celebrate your achievements with our GV's Awards, recognizing innovative projects across various verticals. Join our community through exhibition visits and masterclasses to stay updated on the latest trends and technologies. Enjoy exclusive access to new products, special discounts, and tours of our Mumbai and Goa plants. Join the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club today. Be part of a community that values innovation, collaboration, and sustainability.
Well, that is fantastic. Well, Godrej Locks and Architectural Solutions, a leading and a trusted home safety business, has announced the launch of its latest brand campaign, Befikar Living Unlocked, introducing us to the next-gen Advantage IoT 9 digital lock. Well, the campaign highlights Godrej's commitment to enhancing home safety through innovation, but also we have with a new television commercial, TVC, that creatively addresses everyday safety concerns. So we have a small TVC, all your eyes towards the screen.
Thrusters.
Check. Door lock check.
Door lock? घर का डोर लॉक किया था या भूल गया?
भूल गया.
घर का लॉक फटाफट से चेक करके आऊं क्या?
ले आइए गोदरेज IoT 9 डिजिटल लॉक, 9 सिक्योर एक्सेस मोड्स, ऑटोमेटिक लॉकिंग ट्रिपल बोर्ड और कई एडवांस फीचर्स. अब घर के अंदर या बाहर रहो बेफिक्र.
घर जाते ही गोदरेज डिजिटल लॉक लगवाऊंगा.
Well, that's amazing. Well, before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you all to VC Live Season 3 theme. Well, VC Live is a monthly thought leadership series that brings together industry pioneers to explore the future of architecture and design. Across seasons, we've explored everything from smart living to material innovation and human-centered design. Well, let's talk about the theme of this season, which is Future Forward, that explores how innovation, sustainability, and people first thinking are really reshaping the way we live, work, and also experience spaces. So today's episode is all about from cities to workplaces, how designing for human connection sets great places apart. That will focus on how design can go beyond aesthetics to spark meaningful engagement, be it in urban environments or corporate spaces. Well, we'll also have an engaging Q&A at the end, which is an open forum. So drop your questions in the Q&A tab as we go along. Do not forget to drop your questions there. Well, before we begin with this evening, let me begin by introducing you all to our first speaker of this evening. And joining us for this very segment, our first speaker this evening is a fellow of the AIA and one of the most respected design voices in the world today. With over 30 years of experience, she has led award-winning architecture and interior design projects globally with a strong focus not only on sustainability, but also on human behavior and long-term environmental impact. From corporate headquarters to hospitality, education, and urban strategies, she brings a rare blend of strategic thinking and design depth. Well, I'm sure by now all of you know who I'm talking about. We have with us, ladies and gentlemen, Theresa Sheils, Co-Regional Managing Principal at Gensler, Singapore. A very warm welcome to you, Theresa, and it is an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
Over to you for your presentation. A very warm welcome.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Bear with me. Okay, so I think what I was really excited about this presentation is that we recently have two new pieces of research to share. And the first one is called our City Pulse. And this is really an anonymous survey of 33,000 people from across the globe in 65 cities. The other one is our Global Workplace Survey. This came out a few months ago as well. And this survey is through an independent research group, 16,000 plus people in 15 countries. And we made sure to include every country which we work in. And what I think is really important about this survey, as well as the other survey, is that these are done not to our clients, but to a great group of people across the countries and the cities and in the workplaces with different clients. So first, I wanted to touch on some great findings of our City Pulse survey. And what we found was that dynamic populations change is part of the natural ecosystem, meaning population change is really always going to be happening, and it's always very dynamic.
Theresa, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I'm not able to see a presentation on screen.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry.
You are audible, but you don't see a presentation.
Okay. Sorry about that. I hit share. Oh, because I didn't hit share. Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. My apologies.
No worries.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm going to just go back a bit. Okay, so these are our two surveys, both the city survey called the City Pulse, as well as our Global Workplace Survey. And so what we found is that cities that draw the highest percentages of new residents are drawn by certain specific basic needs. They're drawn by financial security, physical security, and the security of health and health care. And the majority of people want to move to urban environments. And the two of the top 10 are both Bangalore and Delhi. But what we found is that the factors that attract people to a city are not necessarily the factors that motivate them to stay. And so people really stay in a city because it's funny to say, but they don't feel bored. They really have a vibrancy in the city that they're in. They have an emotional attachment to the city. They are proud of their city, this sense of civic pride, this vibrant, dynamic social scene, and then also a sense of belonging. And so when you look at these different factors, these are really what adds up to having people that want to stay in their cities. And so our survey asked people overall, how satisfied are you with your city? And you can see that of the top 6 cities that said they were satisfied, 3 of them are in India. But being satisfied does not necessarily mean people stay. So what is the difference between being satisfied and wanting to stay in the city? And so you see that the top 10 cities where residents are most likely to stay were actually, you can see Seoul is here at 70%, and yet they're one of the top 10 cities where people are most likely to stay. And so again, this is a project that we did in Bangalore, uh, and it's really this idea of how do you get this civic pride? How do you have a heritage building that we worked with Samsung to redevelop, and really in the heart of the city, kind of taking this historic landmark, but also bringing it into the future. And how do you keep that urban fabric and weaving it into that urban fabric? And how do you revitalize the building that's there that can positively impact an entire community? And what I love about this project is that it really turned what had really become a not as much of a civic landmark as it could be, and we turned it into a really vibrant green community that's really open to all. And so now I want to go from the macro to the micro. So in our global workplace survey with 16,000 plus participants, we surveyed India as well. And what we found out was that only 16% of India's workforce wants a corporate workplace experience. And what they're looking for is new. And that's not unusual for our survey. That's actually something that's very common when we did our survey this year. But there were some different findings in India versus other countries. Really, if you see on the left, this is where people rate city factors that are getting worse in their cities. So traffic being one of them. And if you look at the cities where they say, or the countries where they say, how much do I ideally need to be in the office? And how much am I currently in the office? So the current is green and the ideal is red. And what you see is the biggest spread between what is currently how much you're in the office and how much you think you should be in the office. The biggest gap we found was in India, and a lot of that is probably driven by traffic or commutes. What we also found is interesting and also consistent with other countries that we surveyed is that this idea of a business hub and a formal place that really is a business-like atmosphere. What are their current experiences and what are their ideal experiences looking like? That is getting much smaller of a percentage of desire. And what you're seeing is this idea of a natural retreat has gotten much larger. This idea of a clubhouse or even a boutique hotel, each of these is now almost takes equal value. And that equal value is because you need to have all different types of spaces so that there's a reason and a draw to why you would come to the office. What makes you travel through the traffic? What makes a 2.5 hour, an hour commute worth when you get there? It's not anymore the business hub. It's now it's combination of multiple facets and different places to be. And so just a quick example of one of the projects that we did for 7-Eleven. It was really to try and get this vibrancy of the city itself. And merge that with 7-Eleven products and brand and how they felt as a brand. And so there was this energy about the space, but you can see that while it does have workspace, all of these other types of spaces were critical to them and made the space highly successful, whether it was the juice bar or the space you could work out or this area to recharge. Also, where do they re-energize? How do they spend their time socializing? Not just around the coffee shop anymore. How do we do that with this really exciting and cultural flair that starts to talk about them as a brand? And so what we found about all best workplaces is that they really enable their workforce to do their best work. And so I think I want to close with the fact that we want to design cities and spaces and need to design cities and spaces that people love. We need to create places that foster emotional connection, have a vibrancy through thoughtful design, and then for cities, instill this idea of civic pride. And these are things that we can when we take our findings in each of the countries that we work in and in each of the cities that we've done the global surveys. We can take this information and use it for our forward projects moving forward as well. And not only can we use that as a starting point, but it can become a dialogue tool for our clients to see if that's where they're feeling and as equally the same as others in the industry, their industry or their city or their country. And with that, I will stop sharing and say thank you.
Thank you so much, Theresa. I must say that was a riveting presentation. Thank you for sharing that very powerful presentation with us on the evolving nature of architecture and really also on its impact on how we work and live. So thank you one more time.
Thanks.
Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's now welcome our second speaker for this segment. We have with us Kaif Faquih, Principal Architect at Faquih Associates, Mumbai. Truly a firm that is deeply rooted in India's architectural legacy, Kaif brings a user-first experiential design approach to every project, balancing creativity, spatial clarity, and of course, business insight as well. So from hospitality spaces to private homes and commercial interiors, his work reflects thoughtfulness, I must say timelessness, and of course, a nuanced understanding of human behavior as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming. We have with us Kaif Faquih as he shares his design philosophy and reflections on how places can create lasting emotional impact. A very warm welcome to you, Kaif.
Hi. Priya, thank you so much. And I was quite enthralled with Theresa's presentation. I found that the aspect of the numbers and statistics that she shared was quite insightful. Thanks, Theresa, for that. Let me acknowledge that was I'm going to go through these numbers again on your research. And, I've taken an approach which is slightly, I would say, prescriptive, and it has the ideas on a more subjective level of human connection and then tying it back into design and architecture. So with that, I'd like to start with the presentation.
Over to you, Kaif.
Yeah, thank you. So as we know, the topic is from the cities to workplaces, how designing for human connections sets great places apart. What is human connection? So my first thought that comes to me is that we need to have some idea, some loose definition, because this is a very qualitative subject about human connection. And that what came to my mind was that we should ask ourselves 4 questions. And the answers to these 4 questions could actually answer the topic of the day, which is, how human connections sets design of human connections sets great places apart. And with that, I'll go to the next slide, so yes, what is human connection? What is the question? And what are the conditions where human connection emerges? That was the other question that came to my mind, that where do we find conditions where the human connections emerge in our regular living, and how can we design for those human connections which emerge? And finally, uh, where can we find some design examples of those great human connections? So these four questions kind of entail what I'll be speaking about today. Next, please. uh, I thought about a loose definition, kind of an observation about the qualities of human connection, and I kind of formulated what you will see next, and which is, great design enables human connection and facilitates human agency to shine through. It is the emergence of resonance between people that is the foundation of human connection. People resonate with each other, emerging human connection happens, and that's what design has to facilitate. Go ahead, please. I must mention, in my research and the influence that I've felt of professor of sociology Hartmut Rosa, very much a contemporary of ours, who's written a great book on human connection called Resonance. I would advise and encourage a lot of young designers as well as interesting people to read this, because I always feel that psychology, sociology has a great link to architecture and design. It's been underplayed too often, too long. We do need a technologically advanced society, but based on a sound psychological, sociological, moralistic principle. So this would be a great start for them. Next, please. Then I had an interesting take on this. That human communication is not human connection. Human production also is not human connection. It's not necessarily human connection. So is human consumption, and so is human transaction. These are things which are by themselves objective functional activities, but resonance within these four activities creates the human connection. So my thought was that we all go about communicating, we go and produce things, we consume things, we transact with strangers and friends and business professionals alike. But how does the human connection get formed? The idea was that we need resonance. Next, please. What are the conditions for human connections to emerge? So, terms of in terms of design, one of the things that I feel, and this I'm speaking from the perspective of India, is we have a lot of scope to increase the corporal ease of in human connection. How we feel at a basic level when we interact with people, is our physical environment and conditions at ease, helps for the human connection to get established. This is one point which I would say is a great start with. Geographical settings also came to mind. This is something for the design community at large, that we know that in India, from our earlier villages, people would spend so much time by the riverfronts, by the banks of the rivers, the seas, and time on mountaintops. So there's a lot of power in geographical settings. So when we design, we always are on the lookout for such occasions, or can we create such situations where a geographical setting is created, because the human proclivity for them and then for people to have human connection is great. Likewise, we live in a constantly accelerated society. Technology, with all its benefit, we cannot deny one of its great outcomes of technology has been speeding up the way of living and people's pace of living. We need the opposite as well. We need deceleration in the environment. We need places and design areas and spaces where we feel decelerated. So there is a kind of a soaking in happening which allows human connection. So I think very important to think also of design in terms of time, not only space. Okay, next, please. And food, we all know we bond over food. It's a very common knowledge. So I thought I'll just include this, that human connection. So we should design things around food as well. Next. This brings me to congregation, which I would say is time immemorial, through various religions and through music, through various, uh, 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 cultural settings, people have been finding a mass connection with a long set of people, a large set of people, and congregation is a great also an technique and an idea in design which we should use. How can we design for human connection? So first, my thoughts go on at the program level. As architects, designers, we must push through at the program level that even though most clients come with a functional understanding of their needs, to bring in the social and psychological aspects of human beings, we create conducive environments for human connections to form at the program level. That is a very important stage to consider. Next, please. Then, as I said, spaces of deceleration. We must design our environments where we've got high productivity, and then we've got the aspect which, in a very humane manner, the architecture caters to, the nature of humans. Also points of entries and exits. I've always looked at points of entries and exits as a very beautiful opportunity to design for human connections. These cannot just be prosaic functional circulation pathways. They need to be designed in a more interesting manner to create chance meetings, or encounters, things like this. Which brings me to networks and nodes. In a larger cityscape, we need to create again hubs where people cross pathways, and many architecture theorists like Nico Salingros and Christopher Alexander have written a lot more about this, and I would encourage people to go through. Finally, the idea of domain, places, and path. Now, this is from the great phenomenologist, architectural writer called Norberg Schulz, who wrote a lot about how spaces become places if you design them, how paths and places combine, and then they create domains, and these domains become, for example, neighborhoods. And these have a certain character that is developed, which we feel even as outsiders when we visit places all around the world, that there is a certain character, a certain vibe a place has, and that gives it a specific connect to when you are staying there. So I think that is an important aspect as well. This brings me to the final part, which is places which I have found to be in and around Mumbai and some of our projects as well, where we found human connection to be strong. One of them, of course, is the iconic Gateway of India. It's a great plaza. We don't make plazas anymore. I don't know. I would certainly appeal to the powers to be that we must consider this as an integral part of public city planning, and a great many people benefit from this. Then there is a hidden part of Mumbai, which is called Ban Ganga. I'm sure many of you are aware. This is such a beautiful space. It has got great cultural history to it. We are so proud of this place, and it could be regenerated into a very gratifying location for people to come to congregate, create human connections, and it's a place of historic pride for the city of Mumbai. So I want to take this platform's opportunity to bring this out in the public. Followed this by, this is an example of corporal ease. I don't need to explain further. You can understand where the human connection is likely to be found. So I think, on a city level, especially in a developing country like India, I think we need to be a lot of cognizant of the fact that we need to do this. This is a project I was in 4 weeks back in Rome, and this is a very private. It's Villa Giulia. It's actually where the Etruscan Museum is. Very few people go there, but I personally, and I was with family, and I personally felt a very strong a sense of human connection. A strong memory got formed in my mind, so I want to show the power of gardens. And the next one will bring me to an idea. This is a project we've done right in the hills outside Mumbai in Alibag. And the idea is that, why can't we have garden cafes? We know that, human beings can connect well with nature, well with food. We could have a system in Mumbai where there are garden cafes. The cafe takes care of the garden and the cafe owner rents the place for free. And it creates a nice characteristic of various garden cafes around the city where people can actually form their connection. So we've designed this primarily with this reason. Next, please. This was a corporate office we've done. Again, as you can see, it was an old building which was rejuvenated. It's an old mill which was converted into a corporate office. We encourage the people both to have an indoor square, which is on the right side, which creates a great gathering space. They keep dynamically changing their furniture, and an outdoor space which, at the points of entry and exit, as I said, people interact very often. Next, please. This was another place we did where, there are a lot of, this is a club, so it creates a lot of interaction for cultural events. And again, it was done keeping a very, the idea of creating a cozy design in the project. This is an ongoing prestigious project for Campion School, which is quite a prestigious school in Mumbai there. And I also, and this is done for the first phase of the project for the kindergarten section. And I felt, human connection also needs to be felt for our little toddlers and our, young citizens. So we've designed two of these activity and community space kind of for the children to interact outside the classrooms. And this, was well appreciated. And that's it. And so at a parting note, I would say, Theresa, lovely to see your presentations and up for the questions.
Well, thank you so much, Kaif. I must say that was a riveting presentation, a very, very excellent presentation. And thank you for sharing your design philosophy and, of course, the reflections on how places can also create lasting emotional impact. Well, once again, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank Theresa. I must say, it's incredibly enriching to hear how both of you approach design from such different but deeply human lenses. So thank you one more time. But before we head into our Q&As, let's explore a few deeper themes into conversation. Architecture Kaif, I would like to take you the discussion ahead.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would like to ask Theresa that, how has her experience being, working in different cultures around the world, and how has there been a commonality that you've seen in this aspect of human connection and design? What has been her experience?
Yeah, I think what a great question, right? And I loved your different examples as well, around this connection and also who you're designing for, right? So I do think, who are you designing for? Each time you need to ask that. Sometimes it's a whole city, sometimes it's a company, sometimes it's students, sometimes it's the elderly. So I think the common piece, I think, is that you need this human-centric design, but it really needs to be authentic to those you're designing it for, right? And I see that in some of the things you were talking about as well. So I love that the thread of that carries through in the work that you do as well.
Yes, over to you, Priya.
Thank you so much, Kaif. Thank you so much, Theresa. I must say that was a stimulating chat. But before we move on to our questions from our audience, I just have a small question in my head. I'd like to shoot that question to both of you. That how do you see the intersection of culture, behavior, and design evolving over the next decade? Maybe we can start with Kaif first, and then Theresa, you can take it over from there.
I feel we all know we're at a cusp. There's 2-3 aspects which are prevalent in the world today. We know that there's a lot of conflict That's one very important aspect, increasing conflict in the world. I also feel that, technology is outpacing the human ability. That's another aspect of the world. I'm not mentioning this with in any ways in terms of fear or in a concern. But what I'm saying is that connection can resolve conflict, and that I think is what designers need to do culturally and over the next 10 years is build those spaces of connection, emphasize in those programs to our clients that we need to include areas and spaces which build these connections. And I think in a very, I would say, somatic manner, I would say in a very somatic manner, this kind of calms people and makes them reach out to each other rather than be in conflict. And I think that's going to be a great responsibility of design.
Fantastic perspectives, Kaif. Theresa, what is your take on that?
I think, Kath, you mentioned something that I jumped on, and was this idea of technology and outpacing. And I think what we really need to do is spaces need to be flexible. For a very long time, we thought we were designing for the long term, and we can't make things disposable, right? We have to be able to repurpose buildings. We have to be able to repurpose spaces. We can't always throw things away or tear things down. And especially, I think, with the technology and the pace of technology and how we're working. And I saw some questions in the Q&A even about how is AI changing the way we work, right? I think having the flexibility of spaces and places is critical, because they're not going to be used necessarily except for the human factor in the same ways. And so if we think that it needs to be adaptable from the very start, and that it's not something that we're going to tear down and redo again in 5 years or 30 years for a building, then I think we're really designing with purpose for the future.
Thank you, Theresa. And thank you, Kaif. I must say that was some great perspectives shared. Well, before we, like Theresa said, we have a few questions from our audience members. But before we take on those questions, we have a quick poll for our audience members. So I hope all our audience members are all alert, because we have 2 poll questions for you all. So can we have the first question there? All right, so the first poll question right here is on screen, which is, which of these elements do you think is most important in workplace design? We have 4 options for y'all. First being a flexibility and adaptability. Our second option is human wellness and comfort. Our third option is a strong visual identity, and fourth is collaboration and community spaces. So our audience members, go ahead, vote your most answer there. So you'll have 4 options here. So you can go ahead and select your most preferred answer. Once again, which of these elements do you think is the most important in workplace design? Is it flexibility and adaptability, human wellness and comfort? Is it strong visual identity, or collaboration and community spaces? You'll have a few seconds, so you can go ahead and vote. And of course, we will see what are your answers there. Okay, let's see. What are your answers and which is the most preferred answer? Okay, so the most preferred answer I see is the second option, which is human wellness and comfort. Fair enough. So human wellness and comfort is one of those very important elements which our audience member think is most important in workplace design. Fair enough. We'll go to our next question, which is our next poll question, which is, what brings you to this session today? And we'd love to hear your perspectives on that. We have 4 options for you. Our question is, what brings you to this session today? Your options are: learn about people first design strategies. Is it explore workplace innovation? Your third option is curious about global design perspectives, or is it seeking inspiration for my own projects? So those are the 4 options. Let us see your perspectives on what brings you to this session today. A few more seconds to really see your answer to what brings you to this session today. Well, I see people are voting right there. So let's see. Well, all right. So we see our option selected right here is curious about global design perspectives. So that's one thing that most of our audience members are looking forward from this session, which is curious about global design perspectives. Fair enough. Fantastic answer right there. Thank you to our audience members for taking that poll up and answering those questions. So before we wrap up, but of course, we have some very important questions coming right there from our audience members. So Kaif, Theresa, are we good to take over the questions there?
Love to.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I see many questions here received from our audience. So first up, I'd like to take from Ritu Deshmukh, one of our attendee right there, who said that thank you for this wonderful insight, Theresa. I have a question regarding how this survey could also shape the envelope and give a new identity to architecture of the reimagined workplaces. Theresa, this question is for you. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One of them was, kind of the future thinking of workplace and the built environment. I touched on it a bit in this repurposing and really understanding if we're really talking about the future, we really need to focus on, how are we affecting the environment, right? So when we look at buildings, they need to be conducive. And I love that people said human comfort, because if we're not designing for humans, what are we designing for, right? So they can't be buildings cannot be trophies for the designers, right? They're not. Um, they need to be for the people that are both in the city and both in the building. They really need to be serviceable for people of all abilities. They need to be really taking into account environmental conditions and our environmental future. So where we can repurpose buildings, I think it's critical. I think we cannot design for 30 years anymore. I think we have to design for much longer span. And I think they have to have a lot of context in the community that they're based in. Uh, you know, Designing for yourself is not an icon for you, is not an icon for the city. It might be a landmark, like meet me at, such and such, but it's not necessarily taking into account the context of the cities in which it's in, and also the inhabitants of who's going to be in there and how their spaces work.
Thank you. Thank you, Theresa, for sharing your perspective. But I'd also like to pick one more question, which is right here. Since we live in a world of technology, I think I should pick this question. That how do you think AI or new tech will affect how we design for people? So, Kaif, would you like to share your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier in one of my earlier interviews, that uh, AI is going to uh, have two realities to me. There's going to be a little brutal reality where many of the formulaic approaches to design will be overtaken by probably an AI system of design. Places which are, I would say, at a base level of functionality, at a base level, which will also spur a new wave and a new revolution of designing even more intensely humane spaces. So I think actually there's going to be a reaction, not negative, it's a positive reaction to AI. And I think, like we had computer technology, CAD, CAM, everything that assisted us, AI will do the same. And the aspects of these humane design ideas are going to be more pronounced, because that is what is the aspect that AI may not be able to do. So I think if we look at it correctly and we formulate correctly, then the baseline activities may disappear for many of the designers, but they will have to evolve.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing your inputs there, Kaif. Well, we have one more question that I'd like to take from our audience members is, how do you make sure that your design feels timeless and not just trendy? I think very pertinent question right there. So we can start with Kaif, and then Theresa, you can also join us for sharing your perspective.
I think what Teresa said was right. For timeless designs, you cannot design as a trophy. The project cannot be a trophy. It needs to be designed sensitively, culturally, socially, of course, the needs of the client as well. But I think it cannot be designed as a trophy. Timeless designs also have that correct marriage of aesthetic, of functional aspects, and of sensitivity to the human environment. In a way, a timeless building almost becomes a human being. So you can almost feel a character in that project. And I think this is what then endures any aspect, be it different eons, different mindsets, and hence it becomes timeless. It transcends. I would even say, it becomes timeless, and it becomes even spatially infinite. So it transcends any fixed moments in our human history.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kaif. Teresa, would you like to share your perspectives there?
Sure. I think, if you're thinking about the workplace, right? Obviously, the materiality of a workplace or an interior space, its lifespan is shorter, right? Just from the materiality and its ability to transcend time. But what I think is important is, how do you make it flexible? And I mentioned this before, in such that it can adapt for the future, that it doesn't have to start over again from scratch. And I also think there's timeless design, meaning it doesn't look like, you don't go into a space and think, wow, that's 1980s because it's teal and pink. But, it's that interior space is only going to last for so long. I think on a building perspective, that needs to be much more much more longevity. And so I think it can't be a folly, and it can't be a trend. I think it has to be something that really responds to the interior. And I touched on this a bit on the other question, but um, you cannot design a building without actually caring and being very curious and understanding what goes into it and how the inhabitants occupy the space. When the tenants go in, or when the hotel goes in, how people flow through the space, how they plan the space. Is it functional? Is it functional from the moment you walk through the door or even up to the door? Kaif, you were talking about some projects like that, and the entries, right? All the way to the rooftop or through the elevators. How is it almost this seamless process, and just feel really clean and right through time?
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Kev, for sharing your insights. Well, we did speak about AI here. We also spoke about how we make sure designs feel timeless. But I see one more question here, which brings another very important aspect into the picture, which is sustainability. So we have one question right here, that what role does sustainability play when designing large campuses or urban districts? So, Teresa, can you share your insights on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to design for the future. And I think, a lot of companies talk about caring about sustainability and having strategic goals, but it's very interesting how many of the people that are developing and doing the work don't actually know the goals of their company. So I think part of the work that we need to do is ask them about their own company's goals, and how do we implement them on a city level. It really understanding carbon, transportation, biophilia, landscape, all of these things. How do you make a 20-minute city so that you're using multiple kinds of transportation, that there's ease to get around? How do you use materials that that are not terrible for the environment? How do you measure the work that you're doing in a way that you understand what you're doing to the future with every piece that you do?
Thank you, Teresa. Very well said. Well, we have one more question coming in from our attendee, Sakshi Botra. And her question is that, what's one project that taught you the most about human-centered design? Kev, can you take the question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think in my travels around the world, I've seen some projects which I would say recently I was there last year in Portugal, and the respected senior architect Alvaro Siza, some of his projects I had the opportunity to visit in the beautiful city of Porto, and I think his work really engages at a very philosophical level of beautiful design for human engagement. I found it very personal. It brings back to a scale of experience that is not intimidating. It's not it's not larger than life. It is very true to a human scale. So I feel experiencing his work in architecture really was a revelation and quite enlightening.
Thank you, Kev. Well, we have one more question coming in from Kirti Lonerkar. She would want to know that what are the key considerations for designing modern co-working spaces that cater to the needs of today's generation, also prioritizing flexibility, collaboration, productivity, and well-being. So these are some important aspects right there. Theresa, what is your take on that?
I think the slide that I showed about the different types of spaces, right? If you think back of how the original workspace was, it was it was a long, almost production line of spaces, and then it became these high cubicles, and then it became low cubicles. Maybe there were conference rooms. Those spaces don't work anymore, and certainly from a generational perspective, people need to have a reason to go into the office. Part of our workplace survey talks about why do people even come into the office, and a lot of times the reason people come into the office is to collaborate with their coworkers. So co-working space is not just about you and your coworkers, but one of the things that people most enjoy about co-working space is that they're connecting with other like-minded coworkers, not just within their own company. And so how do you have these spaces for rest, respite, fun, quiet? Post-pandemic, I think we've really seen that quiet spaces and especially how noisy workplaces get with everybody on the phone and that the spaces get tighter. Quiet spaces to heads down and focus is one of the reasons people really are coming back to the office, in addition to those spaces where they can collaborate with others. So having those mix of spaces and not just the business space.
Thank you, Theresa. Kev, would you also like to share your take on that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, a workspace is almost, now with how integrated society is, a workspace is almost like a second home. It's if you feel belonged in your workspace, everything changes in how you do your work. So I feel, let's look at it this way, that it's a place of dwelling as well. Of course, nobody's going to stay there, but in a sense, for the few hours that you're there, you must feel a certain sense of security and ease in your existence. For this, I feel, as Teresa mentioned, there are aspects of human needs. Now, one of the challenges that I have found when designing workspaces, and this is even more so important in India because this is a very old civilization. Our cultural roots are very complex, and and the nuances come out in people's demands and needs. So how do you design where you've got the quiet spaces, you've got the spaces for interaction, but at the same time there's some amount of amalgamation, some amount of fluidity, and some amount of balance in integrating them. They are not in I've seen in our people and in our country that disjointing them makes them a little uneasy. So I think there's a little more fluidity, and I guess that's a more Eastern perspective as well, between how these spaces need to work. It's kind of antagonistic, but kind of also fluid.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kev. Well, we'd also like to bring one more perspective in picture, which is governance. Well, we have a very interesting question from Harshal Safi. who's mentioned, firstly, he's thanking Theresa and Kaif for your presentations. But he'd also like to know that, do you think that governance plays an important part in designing for human comfort? He's used an example for a city like Mumbai versus Singapore, how the governance is people first, and how can this be put forth to the government and by what mediums? That question is by Harshal Safi. So maybe we'll begin with Theresa first, and we'll bring in Kaif later on that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think I'll go back to sustainability. Um, I think without cities actually really pushing that, I think we're going to have a hard time moving the needle on sustainability. And sometimes I think it has to be done. It's this idea of carrot and stick, right? So when is it something that people want to do? And then when is it something that is really done for them, whether they're ready to do it or not? So I think if you look at Singapore, there is when they want to do something, I'll just use sustainability as an example. They have a goal and a platform that they want to reach by a certain date. And they've put it to the developers that they need to hit these targets. And each year they don't hit the targets, their tax grows and grows, and it starts to pinch a bit more. And so that's a way that through government you can accelerate change in things. I just wanted to kind of share an example.
Thank you, Theresa. Kaif, can you take that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. I think one of the best. Governance is everything currently for India, I feel, at the stated we are. And, I want to pick on what Teresa said, Singapore's a prime example of what governance can do for a place in 50 years, And, with the admirable premiership of, the late Prime Minister Lee Kuan, we need similar programs here, in India, where, first of all, the city has to be looked as a whole. Secondly, I feel that sustainability is not as mentioned earlier, not a individual issue. It's a species issue. So it's a species planetary issue. Very difficult issue to govern at a species level. We all know that. Easier to govern at individual or smaller bodies. So I think the answer, at least for Indian cities, is as we are progressing to reach the first world, to belong to more comfortable and ease functional spaces, along with our focus on transport, our focus on getting from place to place, we should not lose the aspect, of developing the other aspects which go along with creating a great city. And those aspects, I feel, can only be given strong impetus if it comes from the governance level.
Thank you so much, Kaif, for sharing your insights and perspectives with us. Well, in the interest of time, we'd like to take one last questions from our audience members, which is from Mihad Kazi, that states, can you please recommend us some books or research papers on designing human-centric commercial centers? So, Kaif, can you share with us some names of books or research?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say first that it's, Mihad, you have said something which is so important to design. People I feel, have kind of lost the idea of going through, theoretical readings of design. I would encourage you to see the work of Christopher Alexander. I mean, as I mentioned, Mr. Norberg Schulz. I would also encourage you to see the work of Nikos Salingaros. There's another architecture theorist and a practicing architect. I would also say that, read sociological books as well. Gustave Le Bon, Junichiro Tanizaki. These are people who have written a lot about design principally. And I think there you will find a lot of ideas itself. As a last name, if you wish, you should also study the work of Merleau-Ponty and Martin Heidegger. These are more philosophical names, but I think they address the key questions.
Thank you so much, Kaif. Theresa, I'd like to bring you in there.
Oh, you're killing me. You had such good books. I need to listen to the recording, Kaif. I guess I look at, I love research, and it's not necessarily research by a specific writer. I just love research in that when companies or organizations or cities start to look and understand what's happening in their cities. And there was a question that asked, do surveys help architects? And in the Q&A. And I really think understanding what people really want through research, whether it's you know, again, a city doing research, a company doing it for itself, something in an industry. I think that the research and even surveys is really kind of pushing new boundaries. And so I love that you listed quite a few authors, but I am always just sort of poking around what's new in research and what's new, what are the new findings?
Thank you, Theresa. Thank you, Kaif, for sharing your perspectives and insights on that. Well, we do see a lot of questions still coming in, but in the interest of time, we will be able to take those questions right now. But of course, to our audience members, we will be sharing these questions with our speakers. And once we receive our responses, we will be resharing it with our audience to get their perspectives on your questions. So hold on till then. We will get all those responses very soon to all of you. With that, we'd like to thank our speakers for a very thought-provoking discussion and keeping it engaging and taking all those very pertinent questions. And thank you to our audience members as well for being such an engaged and a curious community. But before we close, Theresa and Kaif, would like to just love to hear one perspective more from you, that what is one thing you want every architect or designer to take away from today's conversation? Kaif?
I hope I've humanly connected to everyone. That's what I wanted to take away.
I want everyone to be curious. I think curiosity is keeps you pushing, keeps you searching. And I love that there's so many questions. It means everybody on this call is curious.
Thank you, Theresa. Thank you, Kaif. I must say that was a perfect closing to this segment, but that wraps up another insightful edition of VC Live. And we'd love to thank you, both our speakers. A heartfelt thanks to Theresa Sheils and Kaif Faquih, and to our wonderful GVCC community. Well, let's continue designing not just buildings, but experiences, and building places that brings us closer, inspire us, and transform the way we live. Until next time, take care and keep creating with purpose. We will see you in episode 11 of VC Live very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thrusters.
check. Door lock check.
डोर लॉक घर का डोर लॉक किया था या भूल गया?
भूल गया.
घर का लॉक फटाफट से चेक करके आऊं क्या?
ले आइए गोदरेज IoT 9 डिजिटल लॉक, 9 सिक्योर एक्सेस मोड्स, ऑटोमेटिक लॉकिंग ट्रिपल बोल्ट और कई एडवांस फीचर्स। अब घर के अंदर या बाहर रहो बेफिक्र।
घर जाते ही गोदरेज डिजिटल लॉक लगवाऊंगा।
Welcome to the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club, where innovation meets collaboration. GVCC is a unique platform for architects and interior designers to merge their creative visions with our innovative product offerings. We aim to cultivate a network of thought leaders, driving innovation and excellence in the industry. Celebrate your achievements with our GV's awards, recognizing innovative projects across various verticals. Join our community through exhibition visits and masterclasses to stay updated on the latest trends and technologies. Enjoy exclusive access to new products, special discounts, and tours of our Mumbai and Goa plants. Join the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club today. Be part of a community that values innovation, collaboration, and sustainability.